When you joined, it made like a laser pew noise. Pew, pew, pew. Pew, pew. Pew, pew.
I'm going to record separate audio today like a good boy. In mono.
Good boy.
Pin Justin's face.
Pins. Pin there.
Pin the potato man.
I turned it into a potato.
Yeah, a little bit potato-y.
It's nice you can even just hide yourself. Just get rid of it.
Oh, can you?
Get rid of it.
Ew.
Turn off vein mode.
Disable vanity. First, I took steps to getting buttons back this morning. I reinstalled Audio Hijack.
Ooh.
I'm one step closer. Just had the urge to copy you, and I think I was just going to pour coffee over the microphone because I didn't have another vessel.
God, what a great start to the show. Oh, I just ruined his mic. They're not waterproof, turns out. How's it?
Good morning. Oh, you're not potato cam now. You're crispy HD, Justin.
Ooh,
crispy. Yeah, pretty good. How are you?
Fine, I guess. I suppose to start off, I have some progress with the bamboo. It seems to be printing quote unquote fine with sliced. Well, yeah, it looks mostly fine. I've tried slicer 1.7.6, which is 2 generations old.
Okay.
We were using 1.7.7, and there's like a new one. I don't know what the new one is. I haven't tried that yet. But I turned off, I just went back to Bamboo PETG Basics filament profile in both 7.7 and 7.6. And it seems to be printing dramatically better, almost perfect. We basically have never printed Bamboo PETG until I've been testing right now.
Okay.
And they haven't had it out that long, honestly. It's been a couple months. So we almost always use Prusa or Inland, and I have not tried those yet. But we had customized the filament profiles for those two, which hadn't really changed. And that also seems to be part of the mess. I don't know. I'm literally on print 2 that's actually seeming like it's working. So
good.
Currently I'm just on standard bamboo filament, which I don't know if it's not my desired filament, but
yeah, I'm interested.
Guess I have to go with it.
Why don't you like the bamboo filament? Because when we got the bamboo, I was just like, oh, I'll just get the plastic that goes with it. It seems to make sense.
Well, when we first got the machine, they had very few options. There was like ABS, carbon fiber, and PLA.
Right.
That's what I remember. So they've put out a ton since then. Their shipping sucks, first of all. So you just really have to like plan out what you need, which sure, if it's a product, you do that, it makes sense. I don't know. We had a lot of success. We were using a certain color, right? Like branding wise, that was always the same. Okay. And finding things that were the same were always tricky. So it worked. It worked with no problems for 8 months. What was it? I don't even know. Got it in December and it worked till, 10 months. So I don't know. We don't have a lot of results yet, but it could be a customized filament profile. It caused some of it.
Okay.
But makes no sense why that changed to me.
Yeah, sure. Have you come across anyone else with issues yet? So just you.
I've got an entire
special bucket again.
All right. That forum post that I shared a while back, there's just like probably, I don't know. There's a bunch of people that have had like, I just started having the same problems. And, right? Like, is it just a coincidence and they're trying to associate their problems to something that could be different, right? Who knows? There's so many factors with these things that, after all this, if it's just how I had Z-hop different than somebody else.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I guess what sucks about this process, and I think, any CNC based machine, especially ones where you can't really control the factors easily, it just like ruins your trust with, like, I don't know. It was just like, oh, we'll just print anything all the time. And there's no question. It was accurate, no problems. And now I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to trust.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. Oh, wow. I'm glad you're making some progress.
Yeah. It's definitely been like a huge brain suck for us the last few weeks of just like, what can we trust? How do we move forward? We've got products relying on it. So anyway.
Yeah.
How about you? What's up?
I've been inspired to write some scripts for Rhino. That's been fun.
Oh, yes.
Super
Those
fun.
are good.
Yeah. Came in, when was it? Friday last week. My daughter got me up at 2:30 in the morning and I was still awake at 3:30. And then I was like, no, stuff it. I'll just go to work. So I went into the shop and so I got to work at about 3:45. And I had a joyful 3 hours to myself, kind of just noodling around. It was Friday, so it's technically an off day for us anyway. And just had a bit of that kind of unaccountable time and kind of just did whatever I felt like doing or that felt productive at the time. And so I did some little experiments out in the shop and I just sat and noodled with GPT writing Rhino scripts, which worked pretty much first time.
Hey, you had that experience I had.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Just well, what happened here?
How do I did, because I'd never, it was so foreign to me that I didn't even know where to put a Rhino script. It was the same with Fusion. I was like, I had to ask GPT, where do I put the code? Tell me how to do this. And it explained the process to me. It's like, oh, Rhino's got a script editor. Okay, cool. And I can test run it out of that. Good. Okay. And then what did I do? I made, so when I quote stuff, I do a sheet layout of parts. And then typically what I used to do is take the length of all those outlines and the area of all those shapes and just some key sort of geometric data and then put that into Airtable where our quoting calculator is, which is fine. I used to have a little Grasshopper patch that gave me that data every time I did a quote. But as I've sort of ended up back on Mac OS and now I'm running Rhino 8 beta, I found Grasshopper to be a little bit unreliable in terms of opening old patches. And so I basically just stopped doing that. Instead, when I did a quote, I was just running individual commands in Rhino of area, length, and converting millimeters to meters in my head and stuff. Anyway, so I asked GPT to write a little script of just take everything I've selected and give me a list of this data that I need and don't even tell me what it is, just to send it straight to the clipboard. So I can jump into another app and paste it. And it just worked first time. It was amazing.
Right.
And I think I sent it to you that morning. It was we're joking. It's kind of feels like godlike powers suddenly being able to unlocking this skill that I've never had.
Right.
Coding's always felt like this kind of desirable but semi-unattainable skill set. And I still can't code, but I've got this ally in my pocket that can kind of patch stuff together for me, which is pretty cool. So then I expanded upon that idea quickly and was like, oh, can I nest? Can I make it do a simple nesting algorithm? And that was less successful, but it turns out nesting's pretty complicated.
Shh, no, it's very simple. Don't let them think that.
But that was fun. And it just feels like it's unlocked a whole nother side of Rhino that I've never explored before. Just exciting. And kind of on the same theme, just Johnny in Slack during the week posted, because we've got a Fusion channel where we share Fusion tips with each other and stuff. He posted a little video where he made a little script for himself that just counts components in a project. So it's how many of this are there? It's super simple stuff, but little quality of life things. It's cool to see other people doing it.
I think you talking about that Rhino thing I don't know. I think I had like vaguely had the thought. I did have it try to write me that same import script for Rhino. And I don't remember what I did. I spent very little time. Either it didn't work or I didn't know what to do with it or something. And I immediately went to the Fusion one because I saw some success right away. But your immediate success in these videos were like pretty mind-blowing, right? Like how easily they worked, how quickly they worked. And since then, I think I showed Erin them and we talked about it a little bit. And part of her workflow for being an architect is using Revit. Boo. And
big boo.
It's a huge, fairly clunky software, in my opinion, with like a million. If you never used Revit before, it reminds me a lot of how Microsoft Word has like 1,000 different top menus, and you like can toggle them, and then all of a sudden you've got a totally new, which Fusion has that too with spaces. So
sure, okay,
it's just so much simpler within Fusion because there's probably just less to do with it. But one of her old coworkers, he's like half developer, half architect, or I don't know. He basically made this thing called PyRevit himself, I think, and he made it open source, and you can still, I'll put a link to it, although I don't think most of you will find it useful, but it's interesting. And he made this free plugin that vastly improves a whole bunch of areas of Revit. And it made me think about how far off are we from just making our own little plugins for Rhino, for example. So it's a sidebar with buttons where it's like Butter's quoting, plugin. And you just make a little icon that runs the script. And it's not so much like, oh, I got to remember which scripts to type. It's like, no, you just load our plugin.
Yeah.
And it's just always there. It doesn't seem like it'd be that far. I mean, and the same could go for, I don't know how to do it, right? I know how to make an add-in that's just a script in Fusion that has no UI at all. And it works. That's great. But it would be nice if I could just go click on a button or have a keyboard command to do it. And then I would have a, what's it called? Not an add-in, but there's a name for it. It's the other thing that Fusion can do, whatever that is. Maybe it is just an add-in.
I think that's add-in, yeah. Well, I got halfway there in Rhino just on that morning because I just, again, asked the robot how to do it. And it was like, oh, just go to your macro settings, alias settings in Rhino, and set up a new alias that runs this script. And so you just have a little command line in the alias code. So I just mapped it to a keyboard shortcut. And so whenever I hit a keyboard, like a certain key sequence now, it just runs this little script, which is rad. And Rhino's quite good in that respect, like customizing buttons and making your own little tool palettes and stuff, which I don't like using buttons in Rhino. Like I prefer to have as much as possible mapped to my keyboard or mouse, but yeah, got to use some buttons.
Yeah. I am like 98% keyboard commands in Rhino. And I think that's always been something. It always makes it seem like I'm some type of weird magician when I'm showing people how something in Rhino and they're like, what are you doing? Because like the commands go by so fast and all of a sudden you've just built something or measured something. And they're always like, I'll never learn this, because it's so obscured, I think. I've had some people ask recently, which made me think to do an intro to Rhino video or course or something. And I've always kind of wanted to do that, but like I don't know why it seems harder than Fusion, but maybe it's not. And time. So.
And time.
Just the time part.
Time. Yeah, totally. I had a similar thing yesterday where I was briefing some of the guys on this new workflow idea with doing production drawings for custom kit parts in Rhino. And I recorded a little quick Loom video of like, hey guys, this is, if you're going to start playing with this, these are the things you need to do. Like you've got to map your keyboard shortcuts. Doesn't matter what your keyboard shortcuts are. You can copy mine if you want. It's kind of essential if you want to be efficient in this space. And like, this is my workflow. This is how I take a sketch geometry through to
Right.
extrusion and how I use snap points effectively and blah blah blah. And it was a quick video, but I think just poor Josh watched it and he commented in the afternoon. It was just like that was intense, like because I was just going it flat out, like full.
Right. Right. Click, 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 click.
Click, click, click. Yeah.
So I was just thinking, I obviously have all these macros too. And it seems like in both of our cases, a lot of, the other people would be starting from 0 or very little. That selfishly and efficient process wise, that all the macros should just be the same. Yeah. Right? Like whatever you've set up, people should just learn.
Standardized. Yeah.
So that it's standardized. And whether that means they're right or not is a whole nother story. But it's like, even going to use somebody else's Fusion, I've found, is just kind of a nightmare when they don't have the mouse map the same way. You're like,
what?
How are you using that?
No, totally. Yeah.
Do you have any tips on parental leave as I get closer to this? How did that work for you? How many employees did you have to back you up? Like, how did it go? What would you wish you did differently?
Good question. Okay, so the first time was 2018, and the business was at a point where I could walk away for a month or more without major issue. So before we'd had Alba, Laura and I'd gone to Finland on a residency at the end of 2017. 2016 was quite a profitable year. So there was money in the bank for the business to be inefficient without me. So I was I accepted that it was going to be an inefficient period without me there.
Right.
And I can't actually remember how long I took off, but it was at least 6 weeks. Maybe 8 weeks for Alba, and then more recently with Remy, I think I took 6 weeks, like fully off, and then slowly sort of came back, half days initially, and then, merged back into sort of 4 days a week. But yeah, no, look, short story is, and I encourage any friends to sort of take as much time as you can afford to in that early period. Because, I don't know, it's a pretty special time and you might only have it once, and it's a pretty unique experience. So if you can afford to and you can get yourself clear of the work headspace for a decent chunk, then do as much as you can. That's and I know that's not realistic for everyone, and depends, running a small business which relies heavily on you. So yeah, there's going to be factors that mean you might not be able to do that. I can't get
over that part of it that just feels like such a huge failure, to this was not a new thing for, we didn't suddenly get pregnant accidentally. It took 3 years of trying, and so it feels, there's no part of it that feels good, that it's stressful to take time off. And that, like Ricky and I just talked about today, we're trying to have some discussions about, because it can kind of happen at any time now.
Yeah.
And just trying to get some of the problems out. And I was like, well, it's kind of like me about going on vacation. We always, and every time I take a little time off, there's that. But, there's factors like, he's never done any purchasing of anything. So it's my goal is to take a couple weeks off, probably 2 weeks, pretty solid, without really having any interaction, the business stuff.
Yeah.
And there's just first thing he brought up, and he's very open, right, to learning and trying all these things. But he's I think you always say, buy whatever you need when I'm gone. You give me a credit card to buy those things. I've never needed to. This time I might. What's the boundaries? And then immediately the first thought I had is none of that's documented at all. Like there is each thing we buy for products, like materials and it's just all in my head. And each one's different. Sometimes it's from this source. Sometimes you send a purchase order. Sometimes it's a credit. It's like, I don't think I'm just not going to be able to figure that out in time. Like I'm not going to try, I don't think. And we'll just figure it out as we go. But yeah, that stuff doesn't feel good. And it makes you realize like how much needs to change if you get to this place of like franchising your business and like making it a thing that's, self-contained rather than totally reliant on a person.
Yeah, it's challenging. I like it. That's the element too that people really they have to, but they do step up in these situations. Like I feel like
True.
They will fill the shoes. My team certainly did in my absence, just because they have to answer their own questions. Like I've always found that whenever I've been absent, it's like magically the questions go away. All those little questions you might have during the day just magically disappear because you're unavailable. And maybe you get a couple of like super urgent, pressing things that they couldn't work out come filter through, and that's fine. But yeah, I would encourage you to document what you can, because it's you're in an unknown time window. And even if it's just informally jotting down some stuff as you think of it. And so you get to a point where there's some sort of handover document. And yes, it will be incomplete and it'll have all sorts of holes in it. But at least you have a handover document. I think that's really important. And so you can, as you walk out the door, you'd be like, hey, Ricky, here's the Google Doc. Like,
yeah. We're starting that today. I was glad I always make something similar to that, but unfortunately it's always temporal things, right? Like I copy some of the same notes about like, things that I do that need tackling, things that are in the moment, projects that need finishing.
Yep.
The thing that's never, not to harp on it, but I've just never really fully conceived of the idea that other people would be purchasing stuff. And it's not for the sake of like, I'm afraid of that necessarily. It's just, it's never as urgent as I guess it's felt the need for somebody to step in and do it, like it's
interesting.
So maybe that's still the case. Like, I don't think there's probably a super strong chance that I'm going to just totally clock my brain out of no interaction. Like at this point I was thinking, it's like I might have to shut my email off on my phone to like actually do this, because like I get like a unified inbox of like all my emails, so it's like I can't just like, or maybe I throw my phone away, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it's to say that I'm not stressed about it would be a lie for sure. Like it's definitely kind of progressed, and having the operations person not work out was stressful and felt bad just in general, because it felt like I had a plan, right? Like felt like I had the plan worked out. So like, I don't know, I trust Ricky will handle things, but it's also unprecedented for us for sure. So I'm sure other people, if you listening have tips, I'm open to how you made it work. But I think it's a super important time. I've gone to enough baby prep classes now where I feel like it's very obvious, my brother telling me and just different, you telling me, other friends, how important that time is. And especially for Erin, like too, like I think it's, I don't see it as her job to deal with, right? It's like, it's both of us. And so if I'm not there, that's not okay. Yeah,
look, you'll make it work. I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
And I'd really encourage you not to give up on documenting stuff because it feels too hard or too late. Like, doesn't have to be neat, as long as you're getting stuff out of your head and putting it somewhere as it comes to mind.
Right.
Or even as you're doing stuff, just like document your day for the rest of the week or whatever. Like, just to make yourself aware of the things that you do that might have to be done by Ricky. And just
Right.
brain
And
dump.
we got a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff. I guess we don't do as good of a job as I think you guys do about like roles and how you do certain tasks.
Sure.
Like we don't really have that so much. Maybe you don't have this, but like if you have things you purchase, right? Like you're selling stuff, either reselling things or having raw materials, like how do you keep track of where and how you purchase them? Is it just somebody's tribal knowledge, or do you keep it in an Airtable record, or?
It's a good question. Do we have no, I don't know. It is still a bit tribal, to be honest. So, whenever I've tried to brief someone on this, like our inbox is kind of a bit of a brain, because every receipt basically or purchase in some way finds its way to the inbox. And so if in the past when I've been responsible for, explaining to someone like, oh, where did we buy that thing? I'm just like, well, have you searched the inbox? They're like, no. I will just search the inbox for 15 mil radiata. And they're like, oh, there's an invoice from May last year. Oh, who was it? Oh, cool, these people. Right. All right, I'll start there.
Yeah.
And so just like even just giving people the direction, like the way, look in this direction.
Right.
I don't know where we bought it from last time, but I know where to look.
That is a big difference, I think, too. It wasn't ever intentional to keep it private necessarily. I kind of viewed it as like we've always had individual email accounts. And then now we have like Freshdesk, which combines mostly customer related things.
Yeah.
So there's no place like that, unfortunately, for us. So
interesting.
Yeah, that's a bit of a trick.
I've thought about this a lot. Like we've had a shared inbox in the business forever. Like I've got my own one, but to be honest, that's like spam and family emails. Like very little business go through my personal Gemma like butter inbox. And we've had this shared inbox forever, and people have grumbled about it from time to time. But at the end of the day, it's super useful as well as like this sort of repository of knowledge and kind of what's that expression? Corporate memory. Like you can search a client's name, and it's like old mate we were talking about before when we're offline, and just like pull up all the conversations from that situation, and anyone can do that.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Like, do you use Xero for bookkeeping? And does Ricky have access to Xero?
Only I do.
Yeah.
At one point, I had one person that was helping enter. Yeah, it's never the operations person would.
Yeah,
that
of
was
course.
part of the goal. We hadn't gotten there yet. There was just enough other stuff that they were working through. Yeah, because we don't track time in there like you do, or
No,
if that's
sure.
part of it. So
I'm just thinking about receipts and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like as we think about like AI features and trying to create that like internal database, it would be really cool to be able to turn some tool onto here's all of our tools, create us a brain, create us like
I know, right?
our own search repository. Because literally a thing we were talking about today, I was like, well, all right, say you get a question about a product that a customer has, they want to buy, search the Freshdesk, search Shopify, right? That's basically how we answer most product questions that aren't like super custom things where we have to come up with a solution. It's most of the time it's something we already have documented, and a customer rightfully doesn't, either our design isn't great or like there's just too much information, they don't see it right away that we answer a question we've got somewhere answered. So turn that into like a larger idea of, all right, we'll search the like butter database, that'd be kind of sweet.
That'd be amazing. That's what I want. That's why I'm interested in open source large language models, I think, for that sort of stuff. But yeah, I would have thought if you could give Ricky or, the person who's covering you access to Xero, for instance, then that's another repository of data of like where we've bought things, how much did they cost,
Right.
I mean, crazy idea, but
It's
could you even like feed like a year's worth of receipts into Code Interpreter and say, you know, summarize this into a table of suppliers and materials and where we get stuff, just as a guide.
interesting. What I think that's interesting. What I think is so tricky and almost completely, I don't think there's any documentation at all. Like our inventory in Airtable has all of the things in our shop, whether it's cog, right, like a thing we use to make products, or just a piece we use in the shop, like a screw, right? Like, and those usually almost always have a link to where it is online.
Yep. Amazing.
That works. Okay, that's fine. However, how you actually purchase it is another story, right? Like it could be billed, could be a purchase order, could be like, and if I had the zero documentation, you know, as you're describing it, I guess a person in the future that's not me could then go out and contact that company separately. I'm kind of trying to figure out a problem. I suppose it's super personal to me and maybe it's not helpful to anybody else,
but
but
I think it is. Like,
I don't know. I'm
so many
it's
people
tricky
be in
to
the
figure
same
out.
boat. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's unique at all. And I think you're well ahead in many respects because you've got such good systems. Yes, they might be primarily client facing in terms of all your resources, but like the fact that you've got an inventory at all with links in Airtable is huge plus.
It might make it a lot easier.
What other little shops would have like the instances of this where it truly is in the owner's head, like what the parts are, where we buy them. You've got a database. Like that's a big deal. Yeah,
that's true. It's definitely true. What was surprising to me about it today was that I had never conceived of documenting it.
Yeah.
It had never even struck my mind of like, he was like, you know, say I need to buy this thing. Where do I? And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that's in my head. I don't know. So the one thing we came up with super quick as a potential initial solution was using that same Airtable inventory and just adding a field that was potentially a drop down, potentially a fill in of like how you buy it.
Great.
How do you procure this? Yeah. And it's just, that's the starting point. I think that would work.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a good starting point anyway.
Don't overthink it. Just get something down, I reckon.
I've thought a lot about over time the way that Saunders has described their, I always forget the name of it, their like ERP system,
Alex,
and how it
called.
Can like, how it can collect purchase orders from a group of people and then automatically send. And like, we could do that, I think. And there's definitely ways that I have, like we do that with one tooling vendor and it's not automated, but it could be. But that whole like emailing a purchase order is like ridiculously powerful as a tool.
Mm-mm.
Like that you don't have to like go use somebody's website that doesn't work, that won't do a certain thing, that it does rely on other people to do manual entry often. So there's potential for other mistakes in the process. Like it's not usually automated, but I mean, I had not conceived of that you could send a purchase order to McMaster, which is a huge supplier for most people in the States. But there's a lot of places that doesn't work. So our new,
we don't do
our new VQuo app can do purchase orders out of it, which is really interesting and potentially powerful for this kind of exact problem where we are offloading who's buying things or doing it as a team more.
It's interesting. We don't use purchase orders nearly enough. I don't think we generate many at all unless a vendor like forces us and won't do anything without a purchase order, which, you know, I think we're pretty reliant on jumping on the website and checking out tooling from a cart or just emailing the supplier and saying, could we please have 10 more sheets of this, please? And then they send us an invoice. And some of them we have credit accounts with. that get paid at the end of the month. But we've always been very COD. Like we've never I don't think we've really utilized trade accounts. We've had trade accounts. We've never sort of utilized like month credits accounts nearly enough.
Yeah,
like they're such a good thing, potentially.
I think they are. I find them, maybe it's just how I've personally budgeted things and learned to budget, but they scare me a little bit.
Oh yeah. It can get real scary.
That like it can get out of control, or that like you're not seeing the invoices, or like it just could, spiral versus, often most everything we just pay with a credit card.
Yeah.
And then that provides some level of security for us. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It kind of feels like a lot of these things for me, having gone to design school with no business training, that it's like I'm just learning them by like some very low level street savviness of like trying it and it doesn't work. Or eventually hearing how somebody else does it and you're like, oh, that's either stupid or smart, like, why wouldn't you do this? But I don't know.
Seems to be how it works.
You need to improve that. You have one more thing, I think.
Do you have one more thing? We have hired a new production operator. And you know how we were joking that the podcast would be the source of all good applicants? Well, when he turned up for the interview, he laughed as when I came to the table because he was like, oh, I was watching you on YouTube last night on the podcast.
Oh my God. Did they apply from the podcast? Like that was the tip off?
No, I don't think so. I think they've been aware of us for some time. But yeah, successful hire is a listener of the podcast, which is awesome. And we ended up with just 2 interviews. We only interviewed 2 people. They were both super strong. Classic scenario where we're like, kind of want to hire both of these people, but we have to apply the process and apply the criteria and not get too emotional about it. So yeah, made a decision, and yeah, we've actually since gone back to the other person too about another potential role maybe next year. So
cool.
Yeah, went really well. So
that's awesome.
Inductions next week, and yeah, get them on board. It's exciting.
Induction means a different thing for me right now.
Sure does.
Let's not get there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hello, person that I don't know your name yet, and we'll hopefully hear about it at some point. But yeah. Oh yeah, cool. I'm glad this serves some purpose, minorly.
I was just like, what? People watch this on YouTube? Really? Who does that?
Not many, but I have been wanting to say for a long time, if you have any inclination of helping us out in a very minor way, we would love to get some more just watch time on YouTube so we can get it kind of monetized.
Just turn it on in the background.
We have, yeah, right. Turn it on in the background. That'd be great. I tend to listen to it through YouTube.
Do you? All right.
Just to
get that watch time up.
To get the watch time. It would be nice. We have a lot of content there, and obviously it's not people's primary method of listening to podcasts, but it'd be kind of cool to turn it into something eventually. We get very little watch time, though. We have been growing our subscribers, though. They're up like 15% in the last couple of weeks. It's quite a bit.
That's quite a bit. Cool. Good tip. I just don't think of it for podcasts ever, even though I know that ours
they changed some
up there.
thing. Yeah. I think you can listen to it on a YouTube music app or something. I don't really know. I just use a YouTube app, but anyway.
I mean, that's the classic problem. You got to leave your phone unlocked in your pocket if you're doing anything else, which is just weird.
Right.
Weird.
Well, so I pay for YouTube Premium, so that is a difference.
Oh, la-di-da.
So you can turn off the phone and...
Can you? Okay.
Yeah, otherwise you're sending a lot of weird texts unlocked in your pocket.
Pro tip. That explains all those messages I get from you. Yeah. Awesome.
Especially if you'd have some holy pockets and you've got some skin contact in there.
Justin Sty has been texting me again.
I think we did. We've definitely done that at one point. Anyway, we should end this before we get to an hour because that was a mess last time.
Oh, that was. Let's not do that again.
Editing-wise.
Okay.
Ugh.
Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck.